Chapter 4, The Whispered Conspiracy. In the depths of secrecy, where whispered conversations carried the weight of revolutions, the members of the Sovereign's Commission for New Canada, SCNC, had gathered to finalize their audacious plan. In a clandestine meeting room concealed within a nondescript building, they huddled in the dim light, their faces a mix of resolve and anxiety. A large map of Canada spanned the table, its surface marked with pins, documents, and strategic diagrams. The room was adorned with the faces of the nation's founding fathers as if seeking their guidance in the bold endeavor that lay ahead. Robert McGregor, a retired history teacher and a driving force within the SCNC, stood at the head of the table, casting a commanding presence despite his gentle demeanor. His voice, like a seasoned storyteller, held the group's attention as he began to outline the intricacies of their grand coup. "The time has come, my fellow patriots," Robert intoned, "to forge a future where the people of this great nation truly govern themselves. We have gathered evidence of the rot that infects our government, and now it is time to act." The SCNC had meticulously planned their move. Each province, each city, would see a simultaneous, peaceful takeover of government branches. Their carefully selected agents, woven into the very fabric of society, would execute their roles with precision. In Montreal, Sarah Desjardins, a charismatic community organizer, would rally the citizens to demand transparency and accountability from their government representatives. In Calgary, John Carter, an unassuming accountant with a keen mind for numbers, would ensure that the financial systems of corrupt politicians and corporations were disrupted. In Halifax, Rebecca Gallagher, a former nurse who had witnessed the toll of corrupt healthcare policies, would lead a peaceful march on the provincial legislature, demanding better healthcare for all. Every corner of Canada had its own agent, a cog in the intricate machinery of the SCNC's plan. The coup was not about chaos or violence, it was a carefully choreographed dance of democracy, a symphony of change conducted by patriots who yearned to see their nation thrive. The room was alive with tension and determination as each member received their final instructions. The agents of the SCNC were ordinary Canadians, each with their own stories of disillusionment and the desire for a brighter future. As they left the meeting, they knew they were embarking on a path fraught with risks, but they carried the hope of a nation in their hearts. Outside, the nation remained blissfully unaware, but the clock was ticking. The whispered conspiracy was no longer a mere aspiration, it was a meticulously planned reality. The SCNC was poised to bring about a peaceful but transformative coup that would rewrite the future of Canada. The bridge between their discontent and a new dawn was on the verge of being crossed, and history would soon be altered by their hands. In the heart of Ottawa, the very epicenter of Canadian power, Minister Richard Mathis reclined in his opulent office, oblivious to the storm that brewed outside his gilded cage. His phone rang, breaking his reverie, and he answered with a sense of authority. It was a call he had anticipated, but he had no inkling of the purpose behind it. "Minister Mathis, it's time," said the voice on the other end, a voice he had come to trust. Richard Mathis, who had once been an advocate for change, had long since been corrupted by the allure of power and wealth. The call was a signal to initiate a series of orchestrated events, designed to maintain the status quo and quell any whispers of dissent. Richard Mathis's role in this conspiracy was pivotal, and he believed that he was untouchable, and that his connections could shield him from any accountability. The SCNC had planned for this moment, and their agents were strategically positioned across the nation. As the minutes ticked away, the future of Canada hung in the balance. Sarah Desjardins, surrounded by a sea of protesters in Montreal, raised her voice against the government's corrupt policies. Her charismatic presence rallied the people, and the peaceful demonstration turned into a call for justice. In Calgary, John Carter made a strategic move that sent shockwaves through the financial world. He was a silent disruptor, targeting the wealth that had been amassed through corrupt dealings. Rebecca Gallagher's march in Halifax grew in numbers, echoing the sentiments of a healthcare system in dire need of reform. The people's voices were united and powerful. In cities and towns across Canada, the SCNC's agents began executing their roles, unaware of the synchronous movements taking place elsewhere. The meticulous planning of the coup was reaching its climax. As news of the peaceful demonstrations spread like wildfire, a sense of unease began to creep into the government's halls. They realized that this was not a fleeting protest but a nationwide movement. For the first time in years, the government-controlled media struggled to shape the narrative. Social media, which had long been suppressed, became a platform for the people's voices. The influence of international organizations like the WHO and the WEF, which had once loomed large, now seemed distant and irrelevant. Back in the clandestine meeting room, Robert McGregor watched a live feed of the events unfolding across the nation. The members of the SCNC held their collective breath, knowing that the audacious coup was in motion, and there was no turning back. Chapter 4 was a chapter of action, of brave individuals taking a stand, and a nation awakening to its potential. The bridge between conspiracy and action had been crossed, and the destiny of Canada teetered on the brink of transformation. The SCNC had set their audacious plan into motion, and the consequences, both immediate and long-term, were about to unfold in ways they could never have foreseen. As the sun began its descent on the horizon, Minister Richard Mathis watched the unfolding chaos with a sense of mounting panic. The peaceful demonstrations had turned into a tidal wave of voices demanding change, drowning out the echoes of his corrupt dealings. The government's response was hasty and frantic, as they deployed security forces to quell the protests. But the citizens, who had long been silenced, stood their ground. In cities and towns, from the bustling metropolis of Toronto to the remote villages in the Yukon, Canadians raised their voices in unison. The heart of Ottawa, where the nation's destiny had been shaped for so long, was now a battleground. The SCNC's plan was working, and the whispers of conspiracy had transformed into a symphony of change. In the clandestine meeting room, the members of the SCNC held their breath as they watched the events unfold. Their carefully woven tapestry of agents, each representing a piece of the Canadian puzzle, was creating a mosaic of democracy that had long been obscured. As night fell, the country was shrouded in uncertainty. The once all-powerful government struggled to regain control, and the people's resolve only grew stronger. Chapter 4 had been a chapter of action, a moment when the ordinary citizens of Canada stood up and took charge of their destiny. But the SCNC knew that their work was far from over. They had triggered a wave of change, but the nation was still entangled in a web of international influence. In the shadows, they had prepared for the next phase. It was time to unravel the web of influence that foreign organizations like the WHO and the WEF had woven into the fabric of Canadian politics. The SCNC saw themselves as the torchbearers of Canadian independence, and the bridge to that sovereignty was within their reach. Chapter 5 would soon begin, a chapter where the SCNC would delve into the intricate layers of international influence and work to restore Canada's autonomy. The consequences of their audacious actions would ripple through the nation, and the future remained uncertain.